시청자 여러분 안녕하십니까? 파워인터뷰 화제인 장혜진입니다. 최근 신라젠을 인수한 엠투엔이 미국의 그린파이어 바이오를 통해 사업 시너지를 높이겠다라고 밝혔습니다. 그린파이어 바이오가 미국에서 후보 물질을 발굴한 뒤 이를 신라젠에 제공하고 임상개발 등을 협력하는 선순환 구조를 만든다는 계획인데요. 오늘 파워인터뷰 화제인에서는 그린파이어 바이오 아직길 대표와 산지부 문씨 CBO를 모시고 자세한 이야기를 나눠보도록 하겠습니다. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, you guys.
Good afternoon. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for visiting us today.
Our pleasure.
Okay. So, since we are here today to talk about Greenfire Bio, can you introduce about your company?
Certainly. So, a little bit of history. 2006, I left my position as CEO of Nectar. And in the years after that, I used to get a lot of opportunities with small companies that would come to me for advice. Oftentimes, they were looking for an investment. And many of them never made it because they couldn't raise the capital. And I used to think if I had a pool of money, because I knew a lot of people who really understood drug development, I thought we'd be able to take so many of these companies and turn them into real successes. So last year, we had the opportunity to actually make this a reality. And we got an investment, and we started Greenfire, and we lined up a bunch of assets that we have been developing. And so that's how Greenfire got the start. What Greenfire is about is taking early stage assets. Greenfire has a very experienced team of drug development people and people who are very experienced in building biotech companies. Take that combination and we will advance those early stage projects all the way through proof of concept, which is typically phase 2, and at that point we will exit those assets. So that is what Greenfire is all about. I'm Ajit Gill. I'm the CEO and founder of Greenfire. And with me is my colleague, Sanjeev Munshi.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Sanjeev Munshi. I'm the Chief Business Officer for Greenfire. And as Ajit alluded, we are an early stage investing company looking for assets that are in the early space that we can then develop at Greenfire. And really excited to be here in Korea and looking forward to some discussion tonight.
Oh, pleasure to hear that. Okay, so Greenfire has some kind of, goal to develop some kind of drugs.
Yes.
So what do you think the competitiveness, strengths of your farm?
I think we have several competitive advantages relative to most other companies. First, we've got a team that's very experienced. There's two parts that are absolutely critical in building a company. We've got individuals who are very skilled at acquiring, at assessing these technical assets and developing them through clinical development. On the other side, we've got a team members who are extremely skilled on the business side, whether it is fundraising, whether it is acquiring assets, whether it is out-licensing assets, the exit side. I was involved with the IPO at what was then at the time called Inhaled Therapeutic Systems. Later on, we changed the name to Nectateраpeutics.
So again, adding to what Ajit just said, drug development experience, identifying opportunities that have the potential to become the game changers. So our team has experience. Collectively, if you look at the team, we have well over 200 years of experience in identifying assets, building them, and taking them all the way through the process of clinical development. I think that is a distinct advantage the team provides. And it's just not the scientific side. It's also thinking through the product development. How and what do you develop for which markets? I think that experience that the team has is really a distinct advantage.
Okay, very having a, kind of a belief on your team. It sounds really interesting. So I heard that your members are quite something. Oh, yeah. Can you introduce your team members?
Certainly. So Steve Morris is our Chief Medical Officer. Steve has spent many, many years, he's an oncologist internist actually. He spent 25 years at St. Jude working primarily on treating children. So he understands pediatric cancers. He has made some important discoveries in something called oncogenes, something called ALK. Based on those discoveries, he started a couple of diagnostics companies. Pfizer actually developed a product around based on that discovery. So Steve Morris is our Chief Medical Officer. Sanjeev, as we've said, is a Chief Business Officer. We've just recruited a Chief Financial Officer who's extremely well experienced on the banking side, which is important for us because so much of what we are going to do is with investors. Michael Weikert is Chief Operating Officer. Michael has many, many years, started out as a scientist, moved into program management, so he really understands drug development. And so he and I have worked together for over 20 years. Chris Searcy, who used to be at Pfizer, and we negotiated with Chris Searcy when we were doing our inhaled insulin collaboration with Pfizer. He is running our urology business. Chris spent many years recently in a urology business focusing on bladder cancer. And so he's building the whole urology business, which we just announced a day or two ago. And it's called Weave Tech. And then on top of that, we've got a few other individuals covering other very essential, something called CMC, which a lot of companies overlook, but it's something that can, if you make a mistake, it can cost you a lot of money, and it can cause tremendous delays in your program. And we decided we needed to bring in a CMC expert very early on. And then we have in terms of an organizational model, we have a very strong belief in program management. And so we always want somebody who owns each program. And Vikas Agarwal has significant experience in program management. So that's pretty much the team as we've assembled it today. Okay. And then on top of that, we've got advisors who bring a very diverse set of experience and board members.
Okay, so again to Ajit, your holding company 엠투엔 chose Greenfire Bio for their business development. So why Greenfire Bio?
So 엠투엔 announced it wanted to become a biotech company. So it needed expertise in how to build a pipeline. You can't become a biotech company without having a product pipeline.
Right.
And so they were interested in investing in Greenfire because our business model was actually very complementary to what they wanted. We were looking to raise capital and acquire assets from third parties and then develop those assets. And our business model assumes co-funding. So we are not looking to necessarily own 100% of every asset. And that fit very well with what 엠투엔 was looking to do. So we decided that both sides actually decided it made a lot of sense for us to get together.
Okay. 자, 이번에는 신라젠 인수와 관련해 그린파이어 바이오와의 시너지에 대해서 알아보겠습니다. Again to Ajit. Okay, so recently 엠투엔 took over Korean company which is named 신라젠.
Yes.
What is your opinion about it?
I think it's a great combination. If you look at Silagen, what Silagen's actually greatest asset is they have started working on a next generation oncolytic virus platform. Their first product was based on an oncolytic virus platform. But the first generation in almost any technology, you show the ability to do something, but it has limitations. Then next generation platform, we believe, is going to be very significant. So Silagen brings the scientific platform. M2N has access to capital. Greenfire brings the development and the business development and the fundraising expertise. So you put these three together, and we've really got pretty much everything we need to build a successful company. The biotech business is one that requires lots of capital because developing these products is expensive. M2N can help with that. Greenfire can help with that. You also need the assets. If you have some really good science, which we believe Silagen has, then you have, I think, all the ingredients to developing really, really competitive products. And that's our goal.
So at this point, I might have to ask Sanjeev about this question. As you know, 신라젠 is developing some clinicals on oncolytic viruses, which is called Pexavac. Have you heard about it?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you evaluate the oncolytic virus? Yeah.
So as Ajit was talking about, our interest in oncolytic viruses really stems from the fact that we think, like many others who thought leaders in this business, that the next generation of immune modulators that are really going to change the treatment paradigm for treating cancers, and oncolytic viruses have a significant role to play. Now, Pexa was a state-of-the-art that was developed at Silagen many years ago, and as Ajit alluded, many a times these new technologies, as we are pushing the frontiers, we learn a lot. One doesn't guarantee success, particularly when you are entering territories and waters that are uncharted and unexplored, but you learn a lot. So what has happened in the last 10 years in the field of oncolytic viruses, we have learned a lot about the successes and some failures as well. And as we know, drug development is a very risky business. You try a lot before you get one success. But that collective learning, what it has emerged into, that oncolytic viruses, if paired with the right amount and right types of immunomodulators, I think that will really change the paradigm of treating cancers. Not only the cancer that we've been trying to treat over the years, but many cancers that have yet not been accessible to the current standard of care. And I think by building the next generation of oncolytic viruses, we now have an opportunity to really take the treatment paradigm to the next level.
자, 이번에는 그린파이어 바이오의 향후 사업 계획에 대해서 알아보도록 하겠습니다. So, Ajit, since a lot of Korean companies are out licensing to US companies, why do you think they're doing that?
I think there's probably two reasons at least. The US market is complex, and it's about typically 40 to 50% of the global market. So you have to develop products for the US market. Otherwise, it's very difficult to justify the development costs. And if you don't have a deep understanding of the US market and what the federal FDA requirements are, I think it can be difficult to do drug development. So I think for a lot of the Korean companies, which typically have tended to be somewhat smaller, with much, much smaller R&D budgets, it makes a lot of sense to partner those early stage programs with a US-based company, let them develop that, and if the program is successful, the Korean company gets significant return. That's a very common way of companies developing in biotech. Even in the US, you will see startups. That is how startups evolve. For the first product, what they do is they will develop it up to a certain point, and then as soon as they can partner it, they will partner it. Typically, when you partner it, you will get some upfront amounts. Depending on how far into development you've taken the program, those upfronts could be 30, 40 million, or they could be 300, 400 million. And you can use those funds then to fund additional pipeline development. It's a very common model for biotech startups in the US. So the Korean companies following the same model makes a lot of sense. They're doing exactly what early stage companies in the US do. And if a Korean company takes the program into phase 2, they could easily get payments that total into the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay.
So over time, but that's a very nice sort of call it funds flow to fund additional product development.
Okay. Then do you have any specific plans on your own, like of Greenfire Bio, targeting US market?
We have been in sort of operation for about a year, and within a year, I would say we've done reasonably well. We have a program that's already in phase 1. It's an oncology program going after sort of the ovarian cancer indication. That's, since its acquisition, within 4 months of the acquisition of the product, we were in clinic. Now that's certainly a real good speed in terms of transaction and then going straight into the clinic. Ajit talked about the Weave Tech we were just announced. That's another portfolio of assets we are building in urology. Now, again, there are things that we're thinking about the US markets, but if you look at some of the opportunities we have in that space, it's a very strong market potentially in Asia also.
Okay.
So definitely we're thinking of US, but as I said earlier, we are broadly thinking globally.
Okay, globally. So you've done a lot. So Ajit, to acquire new candidate substances, since it's really important and to progress clinicals, you do have to consider about financing. And you said all the funds is, kind of complicated, but since it is really important to raise funds to manage all those things, do you have any plan for that?
On the fundraising side, it's a critical part, because if you start to run low on cash, what happens is very often companies will slow down their development as a way of saving cash. So one of the things we did at Nectar was always make sure we had enough capital to keep product development going at the pace we wanted it to go. The company was always well capitalized. Our principle was you raise money when you can, not when you need it. If you are trying to raise money when you need it, you almost always get a bad deal, because people know you need the money. Okay? A lot of companies will wait until after they get the data from let's say a phase 2 trial. They'll say, I'll wait, the data will come out, my stock price will go up, and then I'll raise money. We did just the opposite. We would raise money before the data came out.
Okay.
Because if the data happens to not to be very good, it can be extremely difficult to raise the money.
Okay. Then what is your goal in Korean bio market?
We hope, so there's a few parts. 엠투엔's a Korean company, 신라젠's a Korean company. We are partnered with them. So we have to pay attention to the Korean market, okay? And we will. And some of that will be, we will always keep an eye on which products are worth commercializing in Korea. So we may try to keep those commercialization rights for ourselves and eventually commercialize those products in Korea ourselves. Second is, as you were saying earlier, there's a lot of Korean companies that have early stage compounds that they out-license. We would like to become the partner of choice. We want companies like that have a product that they're looking to out-license.
very pleasant to hear that Korean bio market is kind of nice to work with.
It is.
So, well, we're at the last question. For the last, can you please elaborate about Greenfire Bio's goal of this year as well as long-term roadmap?
Our primary goal is we want to build a pipeline. We want to have a broad pipeline because this is a high-risk business and programs fail. Trying to predict how the human biology is going to perform is very risky. So we want to have a large number of programs that, so if you look at it as like a portfolio, the overall portfolio has relatively low risk. Our goal is by the end of this year, we would like to have as many as 6 programs as part of Greenfire. And by the end of next year, we want to have at least 10 programs. By the end of next year, we want to have at least 6, preferably as many as 8 programs in clinical development. And if we are able to do that, and I see no reason why we can't, I think we will have a terrifically successful company because we will have spread the risk out over a large number of programs.
The Greenfire Bio could be developed into, global company and then develop a lot of good stuff, to help people treat it.
That is certainly our plan.
That's the most...
Absolutely. Right. That is our plan. That is what we intend to do, is make Greenfire and by extension, our partners in this business, 엠투엔 and 신라젠, very, very successful companies.
Right. Okay, so do you have any message you want to deliver to Korean investors? Well, you can say anything at any point.
Okay. I think Greenfire it's a different business model. There are several other companies that have a similar business model. One of the more recent ones is a company called Cullinan Oncology. Cullinan has 7 programs. Only one of them is in phase 1. It has a market cap of somewhere around $1.3 billion. So this business can be hugely rewarding. And with our business model of co-funding, where we will, that will allow us to actually invest in many more programs than if we try to own all of these programs ourselves, we will build a broad portfolio. There's another company that has a similar business model called Roivant. Roivant has raised a few $1 billion. Think of us as an asset-light Roivant. I don't think we will need, at Greenfire, to raise hundreds of millions and billions of dollars to build a very nice pipeline. And that is because we will use a co-funding model. We will bring others to share in that risk. And at the beginning, everyone thinks their program is fantastic, it's going to be hugely successful, and so they don't want to give up anything. The reality is, every time you think that at the start, but then why do programs fail? Because that's how this business is. And so our attitude is, we will share that risk, and we will share the investment and share the risk. We'll share the rewards. Mm-hmm. But we will have maybe twice as many.
미국 신약개발 전문기업 그린파이어 바이오의 아직길 대표, 산지부 문씨 CBO와 함께 앞으로의 사업 방향성에 대해서 알아보는 시간을 가졌습니다. 신라젠의 경험과 기술력에 그린파이어 바이오의 전문성이 더해져 글로벌 바이오 기업으로 거듭날 그린파이어 바이오의 미래를 기대해 보겠습니다. 오늘 함께해 주신 아직길 대표님, 산지부 문씨 CBO님 고맙습니다.
Thank you.